So welcome everyone to the Lunch and Learn session with Ian. I'd like to introduce Ian. Ian has partnered with and consulted organizations such as IBM, Oracle, Bain & Company, McKinsey, NVIDIA, and Amazon, and brings deep expertise in AI, augmented virtual realities, and emerging healthcare technology. He regularly provides market evaluations for global expert networks with clientele including big three consulting firms, Fortune 100 firms, venture capital groups, and others. Ian has served as a principal investigator and sponsor of preclinical and clinical trials for cutting-edge technologies in the life sciences. Additionally, Ian sits on the board of advisors as a shareholder of a telehealth company. He is a fellow of the American College of Healthcare Trustees and has managed budgets as high as $1 million for the development of human and machine resources for life science applications. Ian currently co-facilitates healthcare-related coursework at MIT and Columbia on robotics, digital transformation, and blockchain technologies in partnership with Emeritus. He also sits in a current working group developing blockchain standards in the US for healthcare. His company, Infinite 80 Industries, is currently building out a 30,000 square foot industrial park and new headquarters for Web3 in the Metaverse. Welcome, Ian, once more.
Thank you for having me.
Unofficially. And thank you for your time. This is incredible bio, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to learn with you and to learn from you today at Lunch and Learn session. The audience is yours. All eyes and ears on you and your presentation. Thank you.
All right, so we will go ahead and begin. So definitely thank you guys for having me. I don't mind sharing this information and making sure that everyone can, of course, have access to the metaverse as well as Web3. And so we'll just dive in. And so once again, my name is 𝗟𝗲𝗿𝗀𝗄, and I'm the founder of Infinite 8, the ecosystem. And essentially we have various organizations that compromise the ecosystem. So we have Infinite 8 Institute, which is our research and development arm. And also we specialize in cutting edge technology training from pre-K all the way through workforce. Also, Infinite 8 Industries is our commercialization arm. And so bright ideas that come out of our research and development, we shoot over to Infinite 8 Industries to become a commercial product or a service. And then we have the Quantum Coin Foundation, which is all things blockchain and Web3 within our ecosystem. And so our focus is primarily working on technologies that are anywhere between 12 months to 24 months out. And we do research beyond that, but we really try to focus on technologies that we can commercialize in the near term. And so when we talk about the origins of not only the metaverse or Web3, but truly all commercial technologies that are here today, we have to talk about cybernetics. And cybernetics essentially is the use of technology to extend and to augment human capabilities. And when we talk about Web3, when we talk about being able to crowdsource ideas and capital through Web3, when we talk about the metaverse, being able to connect with people in real time all over the world, those aspects are a part of cybernetics. They're a part of extending and augmenting human capabilities. And so you have Norbert Wiener, who's the founder of Cybernetics, and he coined the term, and he said, we have decided to call the entire field of control and communication theory, whether in the machine or in the animal, by the name of cybernetics, meaning steersman in Greek. And so technology is a way to manifest human creativity and to extend a concept that originates in our mind into the physical world. And so when you think about the metaverse, that is an extension of our own creativity, a world where we can infinitely create anything that we can essentially imagine. And so what is the metaverse, right? What is the metaverse? Essentially, the metaverse is a three-dimensional world. It's a three-dimensional world. It essentially comes out of the gaming world, where they were utilizing powerful computers called graphics processing units. And these computers, or these graphics cards, essentially were used for AAA games, right? Your PlayStation, your Xbox, etc. This technology was what was fueling the really nascent gaming revolution. And so now that's being utilized and commercialized in other aspects of society, and the metaverse is a realization of that. Also, the metaverse is a collaborative space where you can have individuals from all walks of life. They can represent themselves via avatars, any way they would like to represent themselves. So it really is a true free space to create, to manifest, to represent yourself in whatever way that you desire. Also, it's a creative space. And so in the real world, we have a limitation of resources. We have so much finances, or so many finances. We also have just a limited amount of real space, right? And resources. And so in this creative space, you can replicate resources. You can create infinitely with a small budget, with limited resources. And so you can create in a way that you never would be able to create in the real world. It's also a simulated space. And so a lot of this technology was also used in the military and enterprise in order to train individuals, in order to be able to go through different scenarios. Also, this space is utilized and has been utilized for some years to train robots, to train artificial intelligence, to conduct potential surgeries, for example, using simulations. And so this isn't necessarily something new, but the way that it's being utilized in a social manner and also with the commercial bend to it is something that is relatively new. So we're going to look at a couple of examples, and I thought that it would be better if we discussed examples from our own organizations so that we can speak and articulate directly from our own experience. And so, like we discussed, we have Infinite A Institute, which is our research and development arm, and also we conduct training. And so for us in business, one of the most expensive things are, of course, people and real estate, right? And so as a result, we've had physical real estate before, but we've paid like $7,000 a month for physical space. And so for us, looking at the pandemic, looking at the transition to the digital age, and that acceleration, it made sense for us to really just create a physical space or a digital space in the metaverse where we could have students that we can train from all over the world that can go into this one particular space, and we can customize this space as it is needed. So we have a room for workforce, we have a room for K through 12, we have a room for early childhood development, we have a playground, we have basketball courts on the outside, etc. And so really it only is the limit of our own imagination what we can create. In addition to that, we are also working on a joint industrial park in the metaverse. And so we've chosen our location to be Maui. And so we're actually on the beach in Maui in the metaverse. And we're creating this joint research and development project where artificial intelligence as well as Web 3.0 technologies will converge, and we'll be able to work side by side, industry leaders and also our other colleagues, in order to really look at what does the future of the metaverse look like, especially when we integrate that technology with artificial intelligence. And so here we have an example of metaverse for industry. And so a lot of people just look at the metaverse and they just see the games in the metaverse. They just see cartoon versions of the metaverse. But truly, there is another side of the industry for enterprise. And NVIDIA essentially has developed its own version of the metaverse, which is called the Omniverse. And this originated, it came out about 2017. Our organization was one of the first to be able to have access to this technology. It was called Holodeck at the time. And examples of organizations utilizing this technology would be, for example, like an Audi, in order to make digital twins of vehicles, in order to be able to determine what it looks like under different lighting with different materials, etc., different textures, in order to determine what the value is prior to actually manufacturing that object in the real world. Another example would be NASA training astronauts to simulate space environments and to do work to actually utilize tools using virtual reality tools, etc., the handheld sets, things of that nature. And so they've been utilizing this technology for a while, but once again, it's just becoming more ubiquitous. And so this technology, the Omniverse, is open. It's open development. And so any developer that wants to get in and utilize this technology can. It's also focused on enterprise. There is a paywall for enterprises. There's not a paywall for developers, but there is a paywall for enterprises. So I think it's about, it may be between 8 to 10 grand in order for an enterprise to utilize different applications that developers create within the Omniverse. Also, this technology is built on top of Unreal Engine, which is responsible for any AAA game or most AAA games that you see. So you see a really beautiful game, Fortnite is an example that we may know of. But if you see a really beautiful game, more than likely it was built on Unreal Engine, and that's the same technology. And then also Pixar technology has been integrated as well. And so very high quality imaging that goes much, much more beyond what individuals really think about the whole metaverse concept when you're really looking at something that looks as real as this. So now let's talk about Web 3.0. And so what is Web 3.0? Essentially, Web 3.0 is built on top of the Ethereum blockchain. And the Ethereum blockchain is really nothing more than a worldwide supercomputer called the Ethereum virtual machine. And the Ethereum virtual machine is a bunch of computers that are connected. Right now, I'll show you what that looks like so that you can have a better idea and a better understanding. And so this Ethereum virtual machine is decentralized. Okay, it is Turing complete with the language called Solidity. And Solidity is the language that the programming language that it's written in. And when I say Turing complete, that means that through this virtual machine, you can run any type of computation that you would with any other type of language. The major languages like a Python or C++. You also have smart contracts, so you can automate different business transactions. They have a currency called Ether that essentially is what triggers or facilitates different transactions, right? It's the gas, they call it gas fees, right? And you pay that in Ether. And those fees pay miners, right, in the network. And those miners process your transactions, okay? And then we talk about it being built on a blockchain ledger. Essentially, that just means that each transaction is essentially recorded to a blockchain. And so everything that you do in this virtual computer is on a ledger that anyone can access at any time. You also have spawned decentralized autonomous organizations as a result of this that may use a cryptocurrency in order to distribute equity as well. And then you have non-fungible tokens or NFTs, which a lot of you have heard about, which is a way to essentially record the uniqueness of a particular asset on the blockchain, right? Then a lot of you know about cryptocurrencies, which the Ethereum virtual machine has allowed other organizations to build on top of it to create other money or other cryptocurrencies that are essentially programmable. Bitcoin wasn't programmable, right? You could just take Bitcoin and pass it from A to B. But with Ethereum and with the virtual machine, it allowed you to program money and to create these decentralized applications that many of you hear about today. And so to give you a better idea about what Web 3.0 is, or the infrastructure of the virtual machine, here you can see the mainnet, which is the main blockchain that the Ethereum machine is running on. Here you see 47% of all of the nodes or all of the computers making up this virtual supercomputer are running in the United States. And then you have Germany, next Singapore, etc. Primarily, all of these are outside of China there at towards the bottom. In Japan, most of these are primarily Western nations. So now what we're going to look at the networks. So here you see about 67% of them are hosted. You have about 30% of them that are residential, and then about a small amount of them are business, etc. And so hosting, when you think about hosting services, there's only a certain number of large organizations that have hosting services, like an Amazon, like a Microsoft, etc. And so if you take that into consideration, it shows you that even though it's supposed to be decentralized, a large portion of it is actually not. Now, what operating system are these nodes running? Here you see Windows only 3%. 95% of them are running on Linux. And Linux is an open source operating system. However, 95% of consumers are running Windows, right? So Web 3.0 is on Linux and Web 2.0 is on Windows. And most people have no idea what Linux is. And so that's a gap in knowledge and understanding. 3 reasons for adopting the metaverse or Web 3.0. So one is where it is physically impossible to carry out a given task. So an example would be an organization that doesn't have the resources to build a hotel, for example. And so they build a hotel in the metaverse first. And then they build out all these services, et cetera. And then once they start making money, then they build the hotel in the real world. And so this is an actual example. Second, because of the economic impossibility of carrying out a given task. And so, for example, there's an organization, a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization that's currently trying to buy a NFL football team. And the team is the Denver Broncos. And so economically, one individual that's not a billionaire, for example, wouldn't be able to purchase a football team, right? Your average individual wouldn't. But Web3, through this decentralization, through tokenization, individuals can come together and put the resources together and do something like to own a national football team. Third, because of the inherent risk of carrying out a given task. And so what if you're going to experiment, right? And you're going to, for example, suppose you're going to negotiate between different parties that may be hostile to one another, et cetera. Maybe you're doing a peace treaty, right? Something like that. Maybe you might have these individuals negotiate in the metaverse as opposed to having to actually come together in person, et cetera. You can kind of set the tone of that meeting. You can set the environment in a way that you would never be able to do in the real world. And then this is an example of NVIDIA's Omniverse, where it has speech automation, where through AI, you can match what a person says and then the avatar lip syncs. How will the metaverse and Web3 change society? One is property and assets become digitized. There will also be less of a distinction between men and machines. And then privacy also will become absent as we work and play more and more in the metaverse. Also, reality and virtual reality becomes blurred. Like, what is real? How can you say that something in the metaverse isn't real? And that may be a real experience that a person remembers. And then also security becomes more difficult because the more nodes that you add to this virtual machine, the more people that tap in through their mobile devices, the more attack vectors and attack surfaces that you have from a cybersecurity standpoint. And this is Decentraland, which is a popular metaverse project. Last, what other ethical questions remain? Who will control Web 3.0? As you see, it's supposed to be decentralized, but you can also see that a lot of it is centralized. It's true decentralization. Right? What does that look like? And then how can Web 3.0 become more accessible for all? The cryptocurrency side, Web 3.0 can be expensive to actually access it. And then the metaverse, you have to have a certain level of hardware, and then just access to the knowledge that it exists so that you can engage. And then this is PancakeSwap, which is a popular Web 3.0 project. So pretty much this is it. So if you guys have any questions, I would love to answer them.
Wonderful presentation, and thank you, Ian, so much for a brilliant presentation. And I think we are just starting with all these beautiful insights. So we already have questions from the chat. So we have 2 questions from Ayo. Hello, are there great resources you can recommend to learn about Web 3.0 from a practical perspective? So are there any resources that you would recommend to learn about Web 3.0 from practical perspective?
Yes. One thing that you can do is actually go to our website, infinite8institute.com, and I'll just drop that in the chat. If you go, we have a free and open source library full of all kinds of materials. And we have different sections of the library that are just dedicated towards the metaverse. And so if you want to experiment with the metaverse, you want to go inside the metaverse and experience it for yourself, or if you want to learn about it, or even if you are a developer and you want to actually start building in the metaverse, in that library, we have those resources for you. And so I would recommend that would be the place that you would go. And then if you need anything else, you can contact us through the library.
Wonderful, thank you, Ian. Another question from Ayo. Any examples on using the metaverse for e-commerce, e.g. product advertisement? So using metaverse for e-commerce.
Absolutely. So right now there's a project that has been ongoing since 2017, and they're building a mall in the metaverse that has 100 floors. And on each floor, you can lease a floor or you can lease an actual store on that floor. And then in that store, you can actually make 3D models, for example, or digital twins of your actual products or services in the real world. You can have digital representations of those products or services in your store. And then you can essentially link that digital representation to your checkout, for example, in your store. And so there's definitely ways that you can recreate a consumer experience and make that experience way more immersive, as opposed to going to a 2-dimensional website where I'm just looking at pictures. I can actually go to a 3-dimensional space that may look like your physical space in the real world. Or if you want to save money and you don't want a brick and mortar and you just want to be in the metaverse, you can do that. And then people can do business with you all over the world.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. It's super ultra cool when you try new sneakers, and you don't even go to the store, but you see and you have the full experience, maybe even better and more interactive. And then we have the following question, which is the biggest challenges in propagation of metaverse? So you mentioned security, law, or do you think there is something else, Ian?
I think the accessibility is probably one of the biggest issues, because primarily, for example, for most metaverse applications, you essentially need some type of virtual reality headset. And that's about $200, $300, just off top. And so, your average person living check, right? Then $200, $300 could become a significant investment. And so that stops a lot of people from getting involved. The there are other ways, for example, where you may get into a metaverse project that is mobile ready. And so a person can actually go into your metaverse world through your mobile device and they don't have to have a headset. But I'd say also the educational component, because so many people have no idea how to get started or how to get involved. You have a small group of people that are creating the metaverse, right? That the rest of the world will essentially inherit. And so because of that, there's a lack of choice, there's a lack of distribution of knowledge and resources. And so I think those are some of the cornerstones of, some of the ethical issues that I would raise.
Wonderful. Yes, definitely. Inclusion and diverse perspectives are really important. So we need to have more diversity and more diverse inputs in when it comes to emerging technologies. So completely agreed with you on that. Ian has a question. Ian asks Ian, are there anything in place for cybersecurity, compliance, and standards for Metaverse and Web 3.0? Ian, would you like to answer, Ian? So is there anything in place for
Sure.
cybersecurity compliance?
Absolutely. So first, I'd like to say, Ian, you have an awesome name. I just want to let you know that. But second, as well, there really isn't. It's really the Wild West. It's no man's land. And so, for example, there's a 600-page regulatory guide that essentially was released. It was leaked from the Senate here in the United States on regulating cryptocurrencies. I think there's something that's recently been released in the UK as well. And so, they're trying to regulate that, but technically you can have a metaverse project that isn't on a blockchain or doesn't have a cryptocurrency attached. And so just because you have a metaverse project doesn't mean that it has to be related to Web 3.0. And so if you did a pure metaverse project, that's no man's land. I mean, they couldn't, how would they regulate that? It would be very, very difficult to regulate at this point. So there's really nothing there. And so I think that's really where they're going to push the bounds of creativity, just because there really is no regulatory guide. I haven't seen anything come out of any major organization worldwide concerning, the paradigms for, organizing the metaverse. And so definitely, I think that means that there's a lot of opportunity. And I would create before, before a sheriff comes to town, so to say.
Of course, we definitely need some regulation all over the place. Or we'll be like in the medieval age. We come to the surface and say, okay, from this day it's our surface, and we'll do something around it. You mentioned some hype and true paradigm. Patricia has a question. She's curious on your take on Web 5.0. So hype or a true paradigm of change?
So I haven't heard about Web 5.0 in particular. However, I can tell you where I know the web is going, and maybe there's an intersection there. Eventually,
Perfect.
you're going to have to put the blockchain and just all web traffic on some type of quantum internet. And they're already working on a quantum-based internet. And the issue is the fact that quantum algorithms would be able to crack all the algorithms that are currently on Web 2.0. And so it's a security issue, but eventually there's going to be so much bandwidth that's going to be on the internet when you talk about turning the internet from 2 dimensions and a whole 3rd dimension. So think about all the people that have mobile phones, and then all of those people on metaverse, right? You can just think about how, my son, he's 6, he runs through our internet, right? When he's playing games on, he runs through all the available internet that we have. And so you can imagine in the world essentially increasing the global bandwidth by going from a 2-dimensional internet to 3-dimensional internet. And so that's something that you're going to have quantum computing and some type of quantum computers to address that.
Sorry, Ian, we couldn't hear you for the answer. So the sound is breaking a bit. Can you please just double check if it's the internet, the Wi-Fi?
Yes, can you
Yeah, we can hear you
hold on
now.
for 1 second? Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, my
Perfect.
apologies.
All good, all
Yeah,
good.
but just to summarize it, yeah, but
Mhm.
just to summarize it really quick, you're going to have some type of quantum computing system or some type of quantum blockchain that the internet is going to run on for Web 3.0, because when you take 2 dimensions, right, a two-dimensional internet, Web 2.0, and then you add that entire third dimension, right, to make it a virtual experience, and you multiply that times everybody in the world that has a device, that's going to be a huge amount of bandwidth. And so you're going to have some type of quantum internet that is going to be able to process all that information.
Wonderful, thank you. So we have some beautiful messages from Scott and Sharon. Awesome presentation and awesome name too. We have a question from Jerry. How might a poorer nation capitalize on blockchain technology and the metaverse to improve the lives of their population? So we mentioned that we should definitely include diverse inputs. We should definitely make it more accessible. But how might some nations who don't have full access to these technologies improve their lives with the technologies that you spoke about?
Well, I'd say the big thing about blockchain is that the collaboration aspect, not only the collaboration of ideas, but also from a fiscal standpoint. And so currently, for example, many African nations, you have to go through all these different processes. Not only African, you can go to South America, you can go to many poor nations. Through the current international banking system, it's very difficult and crude to move money around. And so as a result, for example, I want to send a transaction to Africa. I may send a transaction that to Europe first, then it goes to Africa. Right? That's inefficient. And so as a result of the blockchain, a lot of resources from all over the world could pour into different projects in these poor nations to help provide financing, for example, for great ideas that may be sustainable, that may be able to provide some type of return financially, but also a return on impact. And so those are one of the things I would say for blockchain. As far as the metaverse is going to allow for collaboration, once again in a way that we've never seen before, but also it's going to be cheap to create and to basically manifest these different worlds. And so you're going to have creativity that's going to come out of a lot of these poor nations that is really going to add value. And so it really levels the playing field from a creative standpoint, from a research standpoint, where individual portraiture can create something just as phenomenal with Web 3.0 technology, that made out someone in a more developed nation.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. It started breaking again, so hopefully we can hear you for the next question. So just the double
Yes, my
check
apologies.
with you. All good, all good. Thank you for a great answer. So we have a very interesting question from Brent as well with regards to the accessibility. Is real-time language translation available? So for example, in Zoom, in this virtual space, in this kind of virtual space, we have live transcript available, but is this available in metaverse in these spaces, or maybe it will be available in near future? What do you think?
So the answer is yes, and it is not available currently in the metaverse, but NVIDIA's Omniverse. And so it's available for enterprise. So essentially, we do a call just like this, and they would transcribe the language that I'm speaking into whatever language the listener, is native to. And so that technology does exist, but once again, it's not really accessible to a lot of people. Just imagine when it
Yes.
does become accessible. And we're talking about the Tower of Babel, where
Yeah.
now everyone can communicate fluidly and seamlessly.
Yeah, Ian, apologies for interrupting you again. Can we please stop the screen sharing and try if this may be
Yep, I'm sure.
is with the sound. Good, good.
Sure.
That's okay. We can hear you. Beautiful. So technology is definitely
So yeah, I
developing
mean,
fast.
so I would just
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so just to kind of circle back and just touch on it briefly.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, in the Omniverse, you do have the technology to be able to translate languages in real time. And you could just imagine the impact that that will have between individuals being able to communicate fluidly and seamlessly in real time all over the world. And so that's definitely something that
Okay, so thanks everyone for the patience. We're having a bit some tech issues with the sound, but hopefully it will get better. So Ian, we can hear you, but unfortunately we couldn't hear you during the past few minutes. Let's try. So I'll read some beautiful things in the chat while you see on your end what we can do.
yeah,
So
hold on for one
all
sec.
good, all good, all good. So so good, so far so good. A beautiful event by Ian, Lunch and Learn session, Metaverse versus Web 3.0. We're yeah.
So can you hear me clearly now?
Yes, yes, we can hear you, and we can also hear you. Beautiful, beautiful.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
Awesome.
So technology is definitely giving us some issues, but we're here to resolve it. And we also have another question from Jerry. So is the technology developing faster than it can be governed? Probably the answer is
So
yes. Yeah.
yes. I mean, the interesting part about Web 3.0, at least, is that a lot of these projects are self-governing, right? And so
Yes.
yes, you have organizations that are essentially creating these laws and rules and standards prior to anyone like the Security and Exchange Commission coming in. Most projects have a white paper that serves as the guiding light for the ethos of that particular project. However, our organization has worked with the Security and Exchange Commission on 3 different projects. We're currently working with them on one of our Web3 projects as well. And I highly recommend that if you don't know whether or not regulation will come down on you, be proactive about it. I would go and talk to the regulators and show them what you're working on prior to finalizing whatever project you have, because it really would be unfortunate if you have to go back and take apart your project, or you lose users because they signed up for your project for a particular use case and the regulators just said you can't do that. And so I would highly recommend going to the regulators and trying to work with them as you advance your project.
Thank you, Ian. So speaking of regulations, should all metaverses be subjected to the same laws as here in the physical world? Or, for example, Paul asked if he should be legally accountable for his avatar or avatars. What are your thoughts about this?
So really what you're doing is now you're going into the laws of robotics and the conversation of robots and artificial intelligence having rights. And what does that look like? So your avatar essentially is a digital representation. Your robot is a physical representation. What's the difference, right, between a robot in the physical world and a robot in the digital world that both do a particular, they both conduct different tasks, right? I may have a bot that goes and grabs information for me. And then I may have a robot that goes to the mailbox and grabs information for me, right? And so you really have to start thinking about larger questions about how do you take these non-human entities, these machine created entities, and how do you integrate them into human society? And that is something that, you know, that we've thought of. I have a book called This is AI, and the second to last chapter, I have a basically something called the Universal Declaration of Robotic Rights. And so we really start to have and push that conversation, not to necessarily determine what it should be, but really just to start and spark that conversation, just like you did, as far as, you know, what are the rules going to be? You know, if somebody destroys and deletes your avatar that you maybe paid $10,000 for because it has a custom Louis Vuitton skin, then, you know, what do you go to the metaverse police? Like, who do you go to, you know, in order to make a claim? If someone goes in the metaverse and you have a link up to intellectual property and they steal your intellectual property, right? Like, you know, who do you go to? And so a lot of these rules have not really been declared as of yet, but I'm pretty sure, you know, any smart attorneys, if they go to their law school administrators and they create these law school courses before other law schools do, then they're probably going to be better off. And so just a couple of tidbits.
Nice. So if there are any digital lawyers, feel free to contribute to the discussion. We have plenty of work for you. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
So can you please tell us, all of you in the chat, your experience with Metaverse and Web 3.0? Can you please type between 1 to 10 in that range? Are you familiar, like completely familiar, or completely a beginner in this field? 1, completely beginner. 10 is I'm fully aware of what's going on. Okay, we have 9, 2, that's perfectly fine. 5, somewhat familiar. 3, 4. Okay, we have diverse group here. So we have people who are enthusiasts and want to learn more. We also have someone who also has experience with it. Let's hear. If you put 1 to 5, it's okay for you to open your microphone and say if you're more comfortable about doing your own research after the presentation Q&A part. So we have Mohammed. Mohammed, how do you feel about this now? Is this topic more fluid to you, or are you more familiar with it? How do you feel? Mohammed. Hi, Mohammed. Hi.
Yeah, hi, how are you?
Good. How about you?
I was not planning to speak because of my bad throat today. Yeah, but very like it's very much new concept, and I'm wondering, you know, I was trying to digest and grasp as much as possible. But I have a quick question, you know, because my background is from healthcare. So again, we think about the applications in healthcare. So we do talk about virtual reality. My question to Ayan is, what would be the, like, you know, layman language difference between metaverse and virtual reality?
Actually, there wouldn't be any difference. There's none. It's the same thing. I'd say it's just maybe more consumer ready than virtual reality. So for example, with virtual reality, you primarily need a very powerful computer and you need a virtual reality headset. With the metaverse, there's different metaverse projects where you only need a phone. You just need a smartphone and you can get inside the metaverse. And so I just would say that the metaverse is just the next evolution of virtual reality.
Perfect. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you both. So we have Patricia. Patricia, you put 8. Would you like to share your experience with the audience? Of course, if you're comfortable with it, it's a safe space here. all ideas and insights are welcome.
I think I come more to the metaverse from the part and Web3 from the part of inclusion or the lack of, as Ian said. I've worked quite a lot about in the area of exclusion, let's say, in tech. And I see that, unfortunately, I believe we are in, when we talk about the metaverse and Web3, we are still in that time of, like, we are falling in love. Everything is perfect. Everything is going to be fantastic. And as Ian said, I think that what we don't see is who is being excluded. Not only, again, at the level of the headsets, okay, because again, not everybody has $300 to spare, but it's not only the headset. You need the computer, it goes with it. You need to pay for the broadband. And also, how many people have the luxury and the capability to be 8 hours with a headset, for example. We do know a large part of the population cannot endure well, VR headsets, just to mention this. We do have as well, for example, I don't see how people that have care duties can have their job done and care for elderly people or for their children whilst they are in the metaverse doing their job. I see also a lot of profiteering from the global south in the metaverse. So, for example, I've lived in South America, for example, and I do see, we see it in AI, a lot of people like moderators and annotators badly paid $1 an hour because they are based in Venezuela or, in Kenya. So I think that the metaverse, what I see is we are not having this conversation. So I'm saying 8 in the fact that I believe I'm quite aware of the good things, but I think we are missing those difficult conversations we are having in AI, and we are still, thinking about regulation of AI. So I'm very concerned about that lack of inclusion on about difficult conversations. I think we should have more difficult conversations.
Yeah, it's agreed, definitely. I mean, these challenging conversations bring innovation and bring the beauty of the world, so that we see what can be improved and we fix that. And when we see what are the great things in one area, we can replicate that in another area and learn faster. So
I'll just add 2 cents. I think that you're completely right about that, and that's why I wanted to highlight that. However, I do think that there's promise in mobile technology and mobile phones. Mobile phones still aren't ubiquitous, and internet connectivity still isn't ubiquitous as of yet, but it's the lowest hanging fruit to get into the metaverse and to try to level the playing field, so to say. And so the resource, for example, that I dropped in the chat, our website, www.infinite8institute.com, there's a lot of web-based resources on there as well. And so, for example, there's programs, applications where you can code and you can use a cloud-based or a browser developer environment, as opposed to having to have a powerful computer to code on. And so there are ways to do it and to go around the costs of computer hardware and artificial intelligence hardware, things of that nature, as well as Web3. But it is knowledge. Knowledge is power. And so I make myself available in our organization. If there are questions for how organizations can cheaply get into the metaverse, as well as Web3.
Okay, yeah. I will just raise a couple more of issues that we don't talk about, is the cost for the planet. Because I think is the VP, one of the VPs of Intel, that he was saying that to get, you know, to the metaverse really, or metaverses, pluriverses, we will need about, you know, 1,000 times the resources, the computational resources that we need now. He says that not even is going to only be hardware, it will need to be software. So that is going to have a cost for the planet in energy, in water, in e-waste, in CO2. And again, we do know because of AI that we will consume that in the global north, but unfortunately it's maybe the global south that gets the hit on that. So again, I think this is an urgent conversation we need to know, to have,
Yes.
about what is the cost for the planet of those technologies. And I work in technology, so I'm all for it, but I think this is a conversation that we need to have at the same time we are developing the technology.
Definitely, yes. Thank you, Patricia.
Yes, and so great point. There are different projects. I can't remember which South American country it is, that they're mining Bitcoin using the gases that come off of a volcano, right? And they're using that energy and they're capturing that in order to power these devices to mine for cryptocurrency. And so I just use that as an example for, you know, for different ways that we may be able to use renewable energies in order to power this next version of the internet. And so I completely agree with you. It has to be sustainable. And the hope is that new types of energy or zero energy sources are able to be utilized in order to make sure that there is an equilibrium between technological development and sustaining the environment.
Definitely, yeah. So important points. Thank you, Patricia, and thank you, Ian, for getting. We have more insights on this topic, and definitely it's time to have a difficult discussion that leads to improvement. Let's have. We have 5 more minutes. Time flies when you're having fun and when you're learning in a really great way. So we had a question from Olu. Olu, would you like to open your microphone? You mentioned that you raised a question on the exclusion that Patricia highlighted.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Alex.
Olu.
Thank you, Ian. The exclusion that I mentioned has to, it's a two-way exclusion. One, women, and also poorer nations. I think you mentioned that. You cited Africa, Asia, some of the Latin America as some of those regions where we could have, you know, exclusion. So how do we begin to have conversations in these regions to reduce the gap, or to kind of, reduce the gap of, digital literacy in these areas? Or we'll be looking at a situation where they're completely excluded from, you know, the technology and also the opportunities that are available, and exclusion also in terms of women, being present, in the metaverse. And I think it was Jerry that mentioned the instances where women have been bullied, or have had negative negative experiences. So I am particular, how do we begin to have these conversations, and how do we begin to make it a level playing field for everyone, whether you're in the West, or you're in the developed countries or the regions. Yeah, thank you. Back to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So great question. My recommendation would be to create committees or some type of working groups. And you can start at the community level, you can make it regional, or you can make it at the nation level, or you can create something that's international. And what I would do specifically for the poor nations that don't have as many resources is I would make the focus of those working groups to research and look at mobile-based technologies or mobile-based applications that allow for individuals to interact with Web3 and to interact with the metaverse. And so they're there. So one example is, for example, like Mozilla, right? Like Mozilla has like a metaverse platform, right? That is mobile enabled. And so as a result, I would look at what resources do you have now, right? And if the majority of the people in the country have access to mobile technology, then you would have to base your metaverse experience and your Web3 experiences off of that mobile technology. The other aspect of it is that women, right, if they can gain access to these technologies through their own mobile devices in the comfort and the safety of their own homes, and they don't have to go out in a public space and be ridiculed for wanting to know or learn more about these technologies, then that also offers a safety net. And then the third aspect is in mobile or in the metaverse, you can have an avatar and you can have a digital representation of yourself that isn't human at all, right? Like you could be a robot or you could be whatever you want to be. And so a person in the metaverse doesn't have to know that you're a woman, right? Just like if they, you know, from a census standpoint, if you have to mark off, you know, your nationality, et cetera, if you're disabled, maybe you don't want people to know, right? Maybe you just want to come and do business and that's it. And so the metaverse offers some of those opportunities, but I would just look at the low-hanging fruits and decide, you know, what you guys have the capability to take on based on the bandwidth and the resources that you guys have. And that would be the best way I believe that you could start. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And thank you, Ian, for wonderful insights. We are 1 minute until the close of the session. Renato, are you ready to jump in for a 30 to 40 seconds?
I'd like to make a point that we are kind of the markets are crashing, Bitcoin are crashing. I'm very worried about we are having like talking discussion about concepts, but and the money to keep all the business running, the cash flow for startups are kind of disappearing. If we are going to discuss like innovation, we need to think about how to thrive in an environment that the money will be more hard to get. I think 2023 will be a very hard year. There are people predicting that will be similar to the 29 crisis in the last century. So I think we must be more worried with like the real world, not only the like virtual discussions. There is people that poverty will be a reality. We must discuss things for the planet, okay, but we must think about the reality that people must eat 3 times a day. So I think the main cause for climate problems is poverty. We need to address poverty issues that's happening right now in international markets. I think there is no internet without money to pay the bills, to have access to internet. So I think we have like more immediate problems to solve.
Yes, agreed.
I have a interesting response to close out. So
go ahead.
Just really quick, you may not know this about me. So my background, you know, I come from a gang and violence ridden background. You know, I saw my father killed when I was 4. My mother was on drugs as well. And this is the environment that we've had to develop as an organization with poverty on par with sub-Saharan Africa. And so as a result, we've had to work with minimal amounts of resources as well. And the whole concept isn't to ignore reality and to go to this alternate reality. More so, I think it's about access. And if some of these technologies provide a person the opportunity to work remotely, for example, from home, and to allow a person to get a job where, for example, maybe they would have to travel 20 miles in order to get to that same job by foot or by the bus, et cetera. So I think it's more so from our organizational standpoint, we look at all technology as far as how can it address poverty? How can it benefit society? And if it's something that harms society more than it helps, it's something that we don't touch. But it's our belief that through the dissemination of some of these technologies, particularly the metaverse, that you'll have more people that are able to access resources, that are able to become employed, that are able to use the creativity and the resources in order to create their own destiny in a way that wasn't available before. And so I completely understand if it's technology that doesn't help people, that is something that degrades the environment, I think it's something that we shouldn't focus on. But if there is opportunity in the midst of it, and in every crisis, there's always opportunity, I think that, it's something that we should at least consider.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ian, so much. You're a true inspiration to all of us when it comes to your life journey and when it comes to your educational journey. The way that you present knowledge and the way you transfer knowledge to everyone is just beautiful. And thank you for that. Thank you for making time for today's session. Thank you for all the beautiful
Absolutely.
answers and making this happen. We are on the clock. It's a really emotional and a really beautiful end of the session. Really grateful for everything today. If there were some questions that remained unanswered, apologies. We did our best to go through all the questions. And if you want to continue the discussion, we'll stop the recording now, but we'll leave the room open for just a bit longer.